Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Anatomy of a Movie here on Popcorn Talk Network. I'm your host, Phil Svitek, back from a slight hiatus. Now,
welcome back.
It's good to be back. Now, I could not do the show alone, so with considerable and, in fact, a lot of help, Demetri Panos is here to join me.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I just flew in from Chicago, so pardon my appearances being a little like I just fell off for Everest. I was there for a great exhibitor convention. It was a good time. I was there on behalf of Movie Pass. Met with a lot of good theater folk up there. Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, a former Playboy mansion, I may add. Beautiful location. So, and then I had to come back so I can scale the summits of Everest.
Yeah, I mean, that must have been the eighth peak of the world. Let's talk about let's talk about Everest. Overall impressions. And I kind of want to. Even with general impressions, I want to start to go a little bit more specific. Why did you see the movie? How did you know about the movie? What got you to go besides anatomy? Hopefully it wasn't just that.
No, it's a great. No, well, obviously that is a reason, but it's a great question. It's a good way to start off a discussion, I think. And for me, it was watching the trailer at a premium large format theater. I had seen this trailer, and when it just looked amazing. It looked exciting. It looked breathtaking. Mm-hmm. It looked breathtaking, and I'm like, "Ooh, this is going to be a movie that seems like it's going to just leap off the screen in 3D and in XD."
To use the quote, right? I think it was. Well, I forgot who said it, but basically, the reason why you climb this mountain, so
because
crime,
it's there.
It would be a crime not to see this beauty that most people don't get to see, and so like this, it was, I feel like format-wise was designed for that.
Oh, completely.
For people who want to sit in a movie theater and not have to pay $65
right.
and have to make that trek.
Yeah. I am not that thrill seeker. I'm not that guy. I was happy to be in the comfort of a nice theater XD with great Dolby Atmos surround, and actually it was the trailer. I mean, you were expecting and hoping to get something that was going to be breathtaking, exciting, and for the most part, I think the movie was. I liked the movie. I think it failed, believe it or not. I think there could have been some more exposition points or exposition used better. I think one of my biggest problems was I really didn't get to know a lot of people, and I didn't know. I couldn't figure out who people were. They were all covered up, and they didn't make quite a distinction of, at least for me, putting somebody in a bright green jacket or something. And I would have felt that maybe for story purposes, had each person got a special jacket with maybe their name on it, because it would have been easier to that person's like that. So that was one of my issues.
I mean, they kept changing clothing, right? Even just Rob, the tour guide, he'd go from this crazy hippie gear, right, with the polka dots, to just a regular red. And so, if they had those various styles, it could have worked a little bit better.
And I do have to say, had I not seen it in that, premium large format screen and sound, saw it at that Cinemark Playa Vista in XD, had I not seen it that way, I don't think I would have liked it. I think I would have liked it less, because it was shot beautifully, and I really felt the rumble of avalanche and snowfall, and like that kept me on the edge of my seat. You know, and you have to see it.
It took advantage of the format.
Absolutely, which is fantastic. More movies this year, or towards the end of this year, are doing that too. Like The Walk, The Martian, Star Wars will do that as well. But yeah, I love that, and I love that these are movies that are being targeted to maybe a little bit of an older audience as well. But this movie, in fact, this movie opened limited. In only premium large formatted locations. So you had various IMAXs and Cinemark XD, Regal, I forget what they call their premium large format, but it only opened in those first for a week.
Well, I it's interesting because for me, I've been drawn to. I'm not a climber by any means, but I've done some backcountry skiing. I've done climbing in that respect, and so I know enough of it to respect it to not really go further than I need to. And I'll leave it. I'll just kind of say, but that. So I was kind of drawn to the movie. The trailer was appealing to me, and then as time went on, and it was time that the movie was out, I kept hearing a lot of, what movie you want to see? Oh, I want to go see a good action movie. Let's go watch Everest. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of, not confused, but intrigued by the fact that this was, the audience was calling it an action movie before they even seen it.
And let me, but you knew the circumstances around Everest,
I mean,
right?
I know a fair good amount of, Everest history.
Right.
By no means am I an expert, but obviously Into Thin Air, I know.
Right.
I'm more familiar with, there's a book called High Crimes, written by Michael Kobos, and that was written in 2008, and he basically expands upon not the full, not kind of like the journey, but really about how Everest has become so commercialized that the thing that will really kill you is not the mountain anymore itself. It's the fact that, you want oxygen? Guess what? We're going to bill you $10,000 extra for that. And guess what? You're going to need it or you're going to die.
Right. Yeah.
And that's, believe it or not, some of the Sherpas taking into it. And, they made mention of it, how base camp was becoming crowded. If that was a crowded base camp.
I know.
This is like you'd have people stacked on people.
Yeah, no, and again, like there is background in this movie. Number one, IMAX, okay, and they even make mention of this. It's a throwaway line, but IMAX filmed. They were there, and they made an IMAX film. It's the type of movie that you would see at a museum of science. It wasn't a traditional theatrical release. It was specifically made for those IMAX locations, around the country, which isn't a lot, but they were there when this snowstorm hit, so they have riveting footage in true IMAX about this, and it got a lot of acclaim and such. And then, of course, Into Thin Air comes out, and that was a gripping detail of what happened to these, the tragedy that befell these climbers. Again, this is something that I just wouldn't. It's just not in my blood. I can see it in a movie. I'm not going to pay $65,000 to risk death like that. But when you said base camp, that brought up, I think, one of my other issues too. I didn't have necessarily a clear geography
of this mountain,
of the mountain, and they could have taken a page from like the James Cameron Notebook of like, it would have been like of mapping certain things out so the audience understands, like the opening of Titanic. I mean, they tell you how Titanic sinks and everything, so you have an idea as to what's going on when the action takes place. Avatar, he does the same thing. He brings up like a map of Avatar, and you could see the various like parts of that world, so you knew where you were. This one, I felt like, God, in that first meeting that they had all the climbers, again, maybe it wasn't true to form, but maybe it would have behooved them narrative-wise just to pull down a map and go, okay, we're here at base camp. And then this is campsite 2, and this is so many feet. And I know that they did this as like a caption, but
that's
you had
what
to
I'm
pay attention.
But I hate I even hate TV shows like Jag used to do it all the time and stuff like that. They just have that thing and it comes up.
Right.
I think they could have gone Jones style with the overlay.
Sure.
And I think that could have worked too, and it would have achieved the same thing of that. I felt for me, believe it or not, the movie moved a little bit too fast.
A little bit too fast.
There was a lot of montages and things just happening. Like we were told, okay, we're gonna have to train for 30 days, and then we kind of. I didn't need to see a montage of the training. I just needed 1 or 2 incidents in that training, because that to me is the interesting part. Having a montage doesn't really explain to me what they are really fully going through.
Yeah, no,
because this is every little detail can be a point of conflict.
No, I agree, and I think too. But again, for me, to your point, there was like I couldn't. It was hard for me to picture where certain things are. For example, Sam Worthington's character. He pops up in like the middle of the movie, right? At first, I had no idea he was with that tour group, number 1. Number 2, I had no idea where he was on the mountain, and I didn't, I sort of kind of had to piece together what he was there for. And it would have just been nice had they said, again, if they just explained to us, like, base camp, camp 2, this is how many feet, this is how many feet. Oh, and over here, we have another part of a tour. They're going to be monitoring us. They're going to be telling us, if they can see any conditions or whatever, because I believe that's what Sam Worthington's character was supposed to be doing. And then it would have been nice, like, when we get to 4, then it's going to take us X amount of time, we have X amount of time to get up there. Then I would have had a better understanding other than piecing it together myself. I actually had a friend who was like, he didn't like the movie. And one of the things he was miffed at, he said, he goes, why didn't Sam Worthington just go up the mountain and rescue them? And I looked at him and I said, well, he was number 1, there's a huge storm, and he was at base camp. Like, there was no way he could have gotten from where he was to the peak of that mountain to help those people. Like, they were just, like, not in any semblance of good time, because we just learned it took them 12 hours from camp number 4 to get up there. And he was like, nah, I didn't see that at all. And I'm like, but if you were watching the elevation levels.
Well, you know what? That's that's actually funny, because that's the Beck mentality. Remember when he tells Doug of like, why don't you just make a run for it? Mm-hmm. You were that close. Why don't you just run up the damn mountain?
You were that close. Right. And so again, I think a little bit more exposition to educate and familiarize the audience.
I think
with where we are in Everest. And then I wanted to, if people are going, we know that people sadly died, and we got bits and pieces of these people, but I would have liked to have, again, like if there were names, something that would signify who this person was, where they were, what was going on, that would have helped me become a little more emotionally invested. Outside of, our tour guide, we knew that the janitor, Doug.
We got to know Helen.
We got to know Jake Gyllenhaal's character to an extent. But then there were all these other people. Like, I believe, 8 people who tragically lost their lives up there. And
I didn't understand Jake Gyllenhaal's character. I got that he was one of those people that just pushed himself to the limit and expected everything the same. And as he says to Rob, you call them, which is great. I'm not gonna do that because I'm not that person.
Right.
And then he just completely derailed himself.
Yeah, and I think
deep down knowingly.
Yeah, I think that it was. Well, there were a couple of things that alluded to, like, that he may not have been in the peak shape that he should have been for this. But then, you need to be in peak shape. They didn't anticipate this snowstorm coming in so hard and fast, and he was literally going up and down the mountain a couple of times to try to help and try to get up and help some people, and he had to bring oxygen. And I think due to his lack of being in peak performance shape, and he wasn't feeling well, and I think it affected him. And Jake Gyllenhaal is a mystery to me because a lot of people were calling this a Jake Gyllenhaal movie.
Yeah, ironically.
Right? Ironically, right? Because I didn't even recognize him in the trailer. Like, maybe I wasn't paying attention, but I was like, oh yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal's in this movie. I said, he is? Where? And they showed him in the trailer for like 2 seconds, and I'm like, well, he's got to be a supporting role. Like, can't have that big of a role. It was a little bit bigger than I anticipated, but this is not a Jake Gyllenhaal movie.
No.
And he's good, but I mean, it's not his movie, so to speak, right?
No, but I mean, and as much as it was Rob's, I mean, to me, this is an argument in itself, but I think Beck, Doug, and Rob were the main characters.
Yes.
And with the exception
I think so.
And obviously, the events are as they are. Actually, I wouldn't even count Doug in that. I would say Beck and Rob.
I would definitely count Doug, because they really made it a point to say, Doug was not a man of well means, that this was his third time, that Rob gave him a discount. We don't know what the discount was in order for him
64,000.
64. Yeah, to go up a third time. And so, we got to know his plight. We got to know Beck's plight, and we got background. There was who is the other woman? The one who had climbed six peaks.
mountains.
Yeah,
this was gonna be your seventh.
Yeah, she was a completist, which I understand, but again, it's like, why do you do anything where the chance of death is higher than the chance of survival, and pay for that privilege? I don't know, but she, we barely knew about her other than her motivation for going up there, and we knew about Krakauer being he was going to be he was going to write about this. He was the magazine guy who ended up writing Into Thin Air. So I knew about all these people, but there are other people who ended up dying too that I didn't really.
Yeah, they were just body counts.
Yeah.
I mean, therein lies the problem, right? Not in terms of the movie, but in terms of what this was. Your goal as the tour guide is to get people on this damn mountain, right? And you just said it well. Of the chances of, 9 times out of 10, the safe decision is, okay, we can't do this. We got to turn around. Right. But if you're a business, forget it. You can't have that low a success rate and be called a good business.
Right.
And and Rob kind of towed that line where he was like, no, my job is to get you up there, but it's more importantly get you back down alive.
Right.
And if I've done that, then I've done my job. You want to get it to the top, I'll get you to the top. I mean, that's what he did with Doug. That was everyone's demise, was that he made that decision.
Yeah, that was the fatal flaw.
Yeah.
That was made. And it's interesting that you say that, too, because of you brought up that book earlier that talked about the monetizing and the commercializing of Everest.
High Crimes, The Fate of Everest.
Yeah, and the thing of it is that sort of kind of, that is one of the reasons why, this tour for Rob Hall was very important, because they got this Krakauer gentleman. He jumped tours, so to speak. And he was going to be part of this tour to write about this. They were going to be on the cover of, I forget what magazine. They were going to be on the cover of some major rock climbing magazine, and this was supposed to help boost their business. They had some down years apparently, so they weren't doing too great
because they didn't get people up on the top.
Right. And Emily Watson had even said a couple of times, geez, what are you doing? We need to get, why are you giving discounts? She didn't know.
Well, I wouldn't have given the $25 a minute phone discount. I would have been like, right. Okay, well, you're going to pay that.
Sure. So I understood that. It was just, it's all about what was, I never got from Rob Hall. He knew. Like he knew that his company needed a boost. But I also got, and I think this was because of Jason Clarke's performance. Even though he made an ill decision, that ended up killing not just 7 people but himself. He was a caring character. I really liked Jason Clarke's performance in this movie. A lot. Like he was somebody that I would follow, in the end, mistakenly maybe, but on previous climbs, he's a guy that.
But even so, up until that point, he had done everything right.
Everything.
He told
right.
Beck, like,
That's
hey,
right.
You're gonna give it, but if you're not good to go, don't you dare climb that mountain.
Right, absolutely, and it was Doug. He tugged in his human sensibilities where he should have said, "Look, Doug, it's not going to happen. We A, B, C, D, all these reasons we shouldn't do it." But he's like, "Okay, I get it. Let's try to run up there and touch the mountain and get down." You understood the motivation for it, but it was a high price to pay for a lot of people.
But there's definitely a cutoff / turnaround time. Mm-hmm. And when you're starting a climb, I forget if they started at like 4 a.m. or I think it was
they started literally
at like 2:42 or something.
Oh no, they started at they got the go ahead at 12. I believe they were using military time, and they got, if my memory serves, they got it at exactly around 12 o'clock, and then at 30. So 12:30 a.m. They started their ascent, and they didn't get there until about. They didn't get to the summit or so till about 6:30 or 4:30 a.m. It was sometime where they were able to see some sun or something, but it took them it took them an extra long time, and that was at Camp 4. And I think it took them. They were supposed to turn around at 2 o'clock. They had that
2
cutoff,
p.m. cutoff,
and they didn't get to the peak if memory serves till around 12, or they got to that one point where the ropes weren't securely fastened to the mountain. I mean, so there was a tragedy of errors or incompetencies that were supposed to have been taken care of already, but weren't. And then there was something else I wanted to ask you too. There was the other gentleman. He was part of Hall's team, and there was this whole thing about oxygen tanks. Mm-hmm. Okay, and he's like, these oxygen tanks are empty, and the guy's like, no, they aren't. Those are fresh. And he's like, no, they're empty. He goes, no, I saw them. They are fresh. You know the gentleman I'm talking about. Did you get a sense that he was losing it from the altitude? Because I got the sense that those oxygen tanks were fine. He was just not right in the head at that point.
I didn't know. I mean, I thought it was speaking to the fact that people were because there was the one of the tour guides.
Right.
And I think it was part of Jake Gyllenhaal's company. That was like, he's like, no oxygen tanks. I will not bring. I don't believe in them. We will not use them. He doesn't use.
Yeah, and that guy, he doesn't even use a mask.
And I thought what they were hinting at was a tampering with them. So that's where I became unclear of like what is the situation with the oxygen tanks.
Yeah, I was unclear of that too. And again, I didn't exactly know where the oxygen tanks were in between summit and peak. Again, it's one of those things. I just wish they said, okay, we're going here, and then we're at 4, and then at this level, we're going to store half a dozen oxygen tanks in reserve to have. So on our way down, or if anything happens, we have these. And it would have been nice to know like where they were, because I just saw this guy. Somebody saw oxygen tanks, and it was Krakauer, I thought, who saw him and said, no, those tanks are good, man. What are you doing with that? He goes, no, they're not good. They're empty. And but I just thought he was just losing his mind a little. I thought that was the way I interpreted it.
I don't know.
I'm
not sure.
Well, let's talk a little. I know we started talking about performance, and I did mention Jason Clarke. I thought I like Jason Clarke as an actor. He can play a hardball guy. He can play a villain. And in this one, he actually was a caring, sympathetic, guy, and loving. He was a loving husband. He had to go away for business. They needed the money, and I just got like he was a good caretaker up until that final decision. He cared about the people that came into his troupe that he had to train to get up to this. And I thought Jason Clarke played that. I go, yeah, he's the kind of guy that I'd want to be with in this situation, because he's not gonna really leave me on my own. He's gonna make sure I got everything right. And if he sees an iota of trouble, he's gonna try to fix that trouble. And I thought he did a really good job in that role.
And he stayed calm under pressure for the most part, and as things kept changing, he kept he kept a cool head and fixed them as they went along. And it was just up until the end when he was in his own mistake led him to despair.
Right. Yeah.
And not even the wife.
Yeah, Keira Knightley, had a nice little role there. Keira Knightley, and she did well as playing the wife and being, it was basically a role that was on the phone, tethered to people like Sam Worthington and Emily Watson, who I really liked as well. I
thought it was, because at first you're like, you understand her line of like, all I do is just wait for you.
Right.
And at first, I didn't understand what that fully meant. Obviously, you are waiting, and it's bad enough because the context, I would say most of us are used to is like like a cop's wife, right. Where they he's going out for the night again, and hopefully he comes back in the morning. This isn't the morning. This is months down the line.
Yeah.
When she says you better be back by the time I have this kid.
Yeah.
She really means it, because that's the amount of time that could go by.
Yeah, and that too. When it let me into that world, those are sort of things that I sort of appreciate. I was like, wow, this isn't just like, okay, you're in Everest, we're going to climb. They actually did take the time to train these people. But I also got the sense that this kind of thing isn't for like a schmuck like me. Like, they were picking people who they felt already had a good semblance of climbing experience already. Like, they didn't seem to be the average Joe. Like, because it just didn't seem, I don't know, maybe Doug, but he had
climbed.
Yeah, he'd climbed two previous times, and we already know that Josh Brolin's character, Beck, was a climber. So all these people, were somewhat experienced climbers. They've just never been to the peak of Everest. That Everest, the highest point in the planet, seems to be, that's the be all end all. If I can do that, I can do anything. And Beck's reasonings for doing it, and like that whole side story was very interesting as well. I thought Josh Brolin did a good job.
I like that aspect of it. Because it was starting to solidify that you can be a thrill seeker as much as you want, but in this context, unless you literally live a hermit lifestyle, you're affecting people by this decision.
Yes. Yeah.
And every one of them was.
Yeah, and his wife.
Positive or negative.
I didn't know Robin Wright was in this movie. And it took me 2 seconds. I'm so used to seeing her in House of Cards, where she's totally in control of everything. And so to see Robin Wright in this role, I was like, oh, hey, it's Robin Wright. It's nice to see her in something else. She was fine. It's, again, a small role, but equally as emotion-packed as I think Keira Knightley was.
I think when she pointed out, like, I think he's scared. He never calls.
Yeah.
I thought and I thought that the way they utilized her in that way, because then it made you honestly question Beck of, well, is he scared or is he just upset that he missed the anniversary? And then as it unfolds later, when he says, I didn't even tell her.
Yeah.
She said, you go on the next one. It's over.
It's over.
I didn't even tell her.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
Yeah, and I think, it's funny because then for me that came, I do believe he actually was scared of this climb. And I think he was scared of what he could lose doing this climb. I think the realization of he could actually lose his family because of this climb, and then it was a duality, losing his family and perhaps losing his life. Look, anything that starts off when any tour guide starts off with, your body's not meant to, like, your body's not meant to be where 747 flies. Walking up there, your body is incrementally dying. Yeah. Like that says, okay, I'm out. See ya. Bye. And I think for the Beck character and the way Josh Brolin portrayed it, that's how there was a duality of fear and what he could lose.
Yeah.
Let
me ask you this. This is always kind of a pet peeve of mine, and yes, it may be correct and all that, but there just seemed to be a lot of booze.
Yes, there was.
If I was going up on Matt, not just Jake Gyllenhaal, his character, but just in general, if it was me and I know that I got to, I would be off booze and other drugs for at least a year
until I got back down.
Yeah. Oh, then I would be.
Then I'd celebrate. It's like, whoa, yeah. I'd fill that pool with beer. I couldn't. I wasn't understanding that either. And Jason Clarke's character too. He actually he was offered booze often. Gyllenhaal, and he's like, you know what? I want to. After the climb, I'm doing that. And I think too that was another facet of Jake Gyllenhaal's guide as being. He probably shouldn't have been having that booze, and they even made reference to his stomach. He just didn't seem to be in the peak position, physical position that he should have been. Otherwise, he may have been able to make those ascents, but there was a lot.
When you're climbing, you're because you got to go up twice as fast and twice as fast down.
Mm-hmm.
That's no small task.
No.
And on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
bad enough if it under good conditions.
I can't even fathom that. So, what did you think of the gentleman who played Doug?
I thought he had a great look to him.
He did.
He really was the average kind of person, that nerdy kind of person. Yep. Oh, you're a mailman. I want to do this for the kids back home, right. and all that. And I thought he did a fantastic job.
I always forget that gentleman's name. It's Hawks, John Hawks. I forget. Trying to find him, but they don't have it in any great order. I know who played John Krakauer from House of Cards. We have Michael Kelly. Mm-hmm. And he was fine. I thought the supporting cast did what a supporting cast should do. I don't think anybody really necessarily shined above anybody else, except for maybe Josh Brolin. But I think they spent more time with Josh Brolin and the Doug character, like you said earlier.
Yeah, I would say they were the main characters.
Yeah, and even above Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, absolutely. I thought Jake Gyllenhaal was. Yeah, I would have liked to see John's character a little bit more. Right. Apart from that scene where he really says honestly, why do you guys do it? No bullshit.
Right.
That was kind of his only real scene.
Yeah.
And then later on, the writer went down.
Yeah.
He didn't go to the peak. No.
Yeah, and like I said, it was the supporting cast was fine, but some of these people, I had no idea who they were. They were in these parkas and masks. Everybody had masks on, which I get it. But I felt that the supporting cast, for the most part, nobody was terrible in the movie. But again, I didn't know Sam Worthington was in this film. And all of a sudden, literally about halfway through, he wasn't at base camp when everybody else showed up. And halfway in the movie, he's like, "Oh, it's like, hey, it's Sam Worthington," and then it's like, "Well, hey, what's going on here? what, who is he?" And I wish there was a little bit more to explain like what his role was, where he was in the mountain, what he's supposed to do. You know, why he ended. Was he close to base? He must have been close to base camp when this thing happened, and like stuff like
Let me
that.
ask
But
this
he was
two couple of questions.
Yeah.
Number one, because for me, the movie really started to slow down in a good way once we were reaching towards the top. I mean, from a I'm sure these aren't actual minutes, but for me, I felt like the once we got to the mountain, that was like an hour. Once we got to towards the top, that could have felt like almost half the movie. And then before that, it was just all about like we just got to get to there, and then essentially this becomes the story.
Yeah, I felt that it's.
And that's why it was so rushed. I was like, there's so many beautiful moments to get there.
To get to the mountain,
which was fine.
But it took advertising. Like we knew that this was going to be about a blizzard, about it almost plays like a disaster movie.
Yeah.
Sadly, though, it was a true story or based on a true story. But I felt that. When are we going to get to that point? Because there was a lot of, going from A to B, leaving families, getting on planes, landing, going to a base camp, doing the training, as you said. And it just took a little while to get to, where that part of the story, it felt like, this was a 2-hour movie. And it was more or less the last hour when they started the ascent. And then when they started the ascent, I was like going, okay, when's this storm going to hit? Like, how's this going to happen? And, so I don't know. For me, the pacing was it was a little bit iffy, a little bit shaky. I didn't, once we got into the thick of things with editing and cinematography, the location shooting, which we have to talk about, I thought that was breathtaking. That's when I was on the edge of my seat.
It was absolutely phenomenal. It's a tough call regardless, because it's one of those things like if you spend, right, if you look at it the story really is about, them now trying to come down.
Right.
That's all well and good, except for the fact that none of them are pretty much going to make it.
Right.
So if all of a sudden, you're going to put, let's say, an hour and a half into just that portion,
right,
then you as an audience member going, they all freaking died?
Yeah.
The hell did I go through? So I think it's kind of, pardon the pun, it's a lose-lose situation in that respect, because that is the bulk of your story is, let's say, the rescue of it.
Right.
But when the rescue's all for naught.
Yeah.
It's just a bad scenario.
John Hawkes, by the way, is that actor's name. John Hawkes. So
got it.
And I agree. And but what part of the rescue? That's the other thing too. It showed the futility of everything, because they were so far away. You can't. There's no elevator or escalator that's going to get you up there in any decent amount of time. You really can't fly a plane. You saw how it was to fly a helicopter there, and I thought the movie did a good job of the futility of it all, and not being able to, we're at base camp. There's nothing we can do. There's no way we can get up there in any semblance of good time to try to get these people down. Or, they were being asked to lug oxygen tanks up there, and we already know how rigorous this climb can be. That to me is there's just no help. Anything that's close by, they didn't have it, and that too is the other tragedy of this all. It was just crazy, but it was filmed beautifully, beautifully.
It was really filmed beautifully, and that's the part. That was one, to me, we kind of opened up on it, one of the most successful aspects of it, and that's why I wish. I don't mind. The whole point is, right, going back to the idea of why. It's because, life, there's a good quote in, there's a movie called Steep, right? It's a documentary, and it's kind of about why people backcountry ski. But the point is, nothing down here makes sense. It's all just fast chaos and blah, blah. But when you're on the mountain, all that goes away. And So I really wish, as we were getting more to the top, we could have had that stretch of time,
Right.
and really
To really
fully
appreciate that.
You know what I mean, and see it from their eyes. And again, the beauty is you don't have to go that much longer. But like them in real time, yes, they're only
Yeah.
going to see it for like maybe a minute before they have to
Yeah.
turn around. But let's see that 1 minute,
Yeah.
real time.
Yeah.
No
No,
cuts.
I hear what you're saying. I wish they had some more, but to me, it was like, I want to get to this blizzard, and we've taken a long time to get up there, and there was celebration up the top for the people who made it, and it would have been nice.
But it was
to
it was a
very
character
cool.
moment
Right.
versus, again, part of me, I guess the expectation that I went into it was that it was going to be somewhat like a documentary type movie where I can enjoy the beauty with them rather than just watch these characters go through this.
Right.
And okay, I was probably wrong in
Yeah.
assuming that. And you know what? I guess that's on me. And it's not the movie's fault. It's just that was my expectation going into it.
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, just knowing knowing a little bit about the history of what happened up there at that time, I was just trying to piece who was who, and I think they just had I think there was a little bit of a narrative misstep, perhaps for me. I didn't feel much connection, to the Doug character. I just knew he was going off, and I didn't know the Asian woman. I forget her character's name, and I mean no disrespect, but with her, it was like she gets up. She seemed perfectly healthy. They were coming down, and I don't exactly know what happened when they were coming down, where she just, she wasn't. She was more of a surprise to me to know that she died. Because I was like, wait a minute, like.
Well, they got. She was part of the group that they got yanked down,
Right.
and then that didn't turn out so well.
No. So,
And that's the problem. You go up there with a group. You're only as strong as your weakest link,
Yeah.
and that poor guy, he certainly didn't mean it, but
yeah, I know.
they all tumbled together.
Yeah. Baltasar Kormákur, the director of this movie. Tell me if you felt this at all. He is quoted as saying, I wanted to create a movie that had the intimacy of an indie on the scale of a blockbuster. And I
would say he got that. I mean, I don't know exactly, I'd love for him to expand upon what that fully means. What are the qualifications? To me, an indie movie, right? I think it's a bullshit thing, but is more quote unquote character based. I think plot and character are synonymous, and people try to make them to be not. But okay, I'll go with that argument. So that's indie, and then the blockbuster side of it is the grand scale of it.
Yeah,
So I think he did.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he slightly missed. Like, I understand he wanted character, and he wanted to. Everest is truly a character, an unpredictable character, as we learn. I just wish that we got to know some of these other characters more, so that when death happens, I get it. But we are talking about a movie. When death happens in a movie, for you to be. For you to have emotion towards that character, you should, in one way, shape, or form, have to know what that loss means. Like should be some investment into that character in order for me, anyways, as an audience member, to really feel to feel horrible about that tragedy. And it is a tragedy. Again, I mean no disrespect to any of the true life people who lost their lives there. I'm just saying, for this movie,
But,
I didn't
I get
really
it, 'cause
feel
look at-
that emotional.
Look at that Titanic, right? I mean that movie is all about Kate and
Jack.
Kate and Jack.
Yep.
Right? And even despite you have people just falling down when the ship goes up, right? And it's tragic in that way, but it's still about Jack and Kate.
Right.
And it isn't only till the end when, she kind of lets him go and then we kind of pull back.
Right.
You're like, oh, wow. It's tragic that Jack, that's one of the most sad moments in cinematic history.
Absolutely.
But then you also look at the grand scale of he's one of thousands.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I guess in a sense, it's hard to compare Titanic to this, where Titanic is a real incident and not a fictitious movie, but that had real people, historic people in it. But this one had, this one sadly had real people. And I knew that, Kormákur did his due diligence, and he did go to a lot of the people who were still alive. And he even talks about like Beck Weathers, the wife Jen Arnold and their daughter. He flew to New Zealand to meet them. The Helen Wilton character that Emily Watson played, he wanted to get a good sense, and I respect that. But at the same time, like he's also come out and said, look, I was making I'm making a movie. It's based on a true story, but there are going to be embellishments in my movie. Krakauer himself called the movie shenanigans, and he just
is it specifically because of that his character was slightly messed with, or you know what I mean? Is he taking it from a place of actual pride, or is there actual weight to it?
Well, I think
because
there was a scene. There was a scene where he was asked to help. He could to help, and he and in the movie he said, I'm snowblind. I can't.
Yeah,
I can't help.
Basically, can't. Yeah,
right.
And so
Krakauer claims he was never even asked. Like he's like, I was never put in the position. Like that movie makes me look like I may not have wanted to do that. He goes, but that's complete bullshit. He goes, number one, I was never asked to do that. So I was never even given the option to try to go help or do my part. And that is something that really upset him to the core.
And I will give him credit. He's not saying that he would have. He's just saying, he was never given that option.
He was never given the option.
But, and I think that's a fair point. And
right.
Obviously, it's a good point of criticism towards the movie. However, it does now. It's because of that personal connection. It makes me question the rest of his arguments against this movie.
Yeah, well, that was one of his main. But I do have to bring up. So he said he goes on and he says Krakauer sold the rights to his book Into Thin Air, but he didn't sell it to Everest. It would have been called Into Thin Air. And around the time it was published to Sony Pictures, which in turn made the TV movie Into Thin Air, Death on Everest. And Krakauer is played by Christopher McDonald. And he was like, people told me movies never get made. Take the money. What do you have to lose? I curse. He's bitter. He curses himself for selling his book at all. And what he learned from the TV movie was that dramatic films take dramatic license. And when you sign a document, you can do whatever you want with me. It wasn't worth the money that I got. So while I interpret that there is a little bit of anger, maybe a little bit of bitterness to it. And then when, in the movie when his character is portrayed as somebody who may not have wanted to help when he was never off-worded it, I think that just fueled his fire somewhat. So.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a guy, this is not the only book that he's known for.
Sure.
Into the Woods. Is that what it's called?
That was a movie.
Into the Wild.
Into the Wild.
Into the Wild. It's the one about Christopher McCandless.
Right.
That one. He does a lot of into something.
Into
the series.
Into the series, into the movies. You should write that book next about this, into the movies. So, yeah. Well, I do want to say though that the director again, Baltasar, he did something that you rarely ever hear in this type of a situation. He actually said he in a sense almost like he apologized. He was like, "Listen, there's no malice intent." Or meant in the film. His quote is, "Our intention in the tent scene that Mr. Krakauer mentions was to illustrate how helpless people were and why they might not have been able to go out and rescue people. It wasn't," he goes, "it wasn't meant to be malicious." He goes, "They were just helpless about the situation." Then I say, maybe you rewrite the line. Maybe like, forget about coming up with I'm snowblind. How about just, he walks into the tent and he's like passed out. I don't know, but I sort of understand where Krakauer was coming from. But there seems to be a little bit of anger behind it as well.
Yeah.
So take it with what it is. And that article comes from the Hollywood Reporter, so you can you can find it there, do a search, and you'll see that article.
Yeah,
I found it to be interesting.
Has anyone else kind of really come out about the movie that has been through it? Helen, Beck, anyone?
Not that I was able to find in my research. People, pointing out the movie. What has been said is that it was difficult to watch. They said that they said he made a breathtaking film. So, I think that, I believe that for the most part, the real people, look, it was turned into a book. It was a very popular book. This movie was going to bring this back up again. And I think for the most part, with the exception of the author of Into Thin Air, it seems like pretty much I didn't read any other bad comments.
I think it was overall well received. And I think there is a fascination with just the idea of Everest.
Right.
I think there will be for a long time.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, it's only going downhill as it gets commercialized.
Yeah, apparently so. But it's funny. We saw the hardships of these climbers. They actually filmed on Everest, right? And they were having a hard time of that. They were. I think somebody even died during a snowfall or an ice fall that happened. The director himself was like, he's quoted as saying, "I was losing my shit." He goes, "It was like being drunk and hungover at the same time. You're dizzy, and can't breathe, and you're in a lot of pain to go up there." And I can't even imagine lugging cameras up there.
I mean, first off, cameras and cold don't quite mix well.
No.
And
sound for that matter.
Yes, absolutely. It's just not a good comment. Because I remember us filming, and it's one of those things. You can go film cameras, and then you basically have to change film. But that a lot of Warren Miller films still do that,
right?
Because it's it's mechanical,
right?
So you're not designated by that. Digital cameras, like the batteries and things like that, they just drain instantly, because of the cold.
The cold, yeah.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah, and like they didn't go to the peak, obviously. They went up, they went to base camp. They were at base camp. And it's funny, he talks about that airport near Everest. And he says it's the most dangerous airport on Earth. He goes, they were scouting there before the shoot. They actually spent a day up there to adjust with the actors. They took off on a helicopter to scout the mountain. And when we came down, where we had taken off, there was a crashed helicopter, and he's like, and I think somebody lost a life. He goes, so you realize that we're in a situation where anything pretty much can and probably will happen. I mean, again, it just seems, hey, Jake, possibility of losing your life on this movie. Yeah, sign me up. I don't know. It seemed to have been a very arduous shoot. And to film up on Everest, well, I give them credit, number one. And the footage that they got, I thought was amazing. And they did use many other mountains, and they actually used sound stages, including Pinewood Studios. But just to give it an idea of where they went. So the Kathmandu, Nepal, okay, that airport acted as a film studio, believe it or not. The film leads Jake Gyllenhaal and Josh Brolin trained for the shoot by hiking in the Santa Monica Mountains. So that's the skill.
If you want to climb Everest, go there.
Go to the Santa Monica Mountains. You might get lost like they did.
Same thing.
So they did do Everest Base Camp. The filmmakers, they received permission to film in Nepal for a short amount of time. So filming at Everest lasted under a month before the team moved to the Dolomite Mountains in Italy. So they used the Dolomites in Italy. Actors underwent, that's where they did climbing and mountaineering training, and it allowed to perform peak while scaling the Italian Alps. They went to Iceland. This is where the director is from. And then they went to Rome, Italy, where they filmed on some sound stages, and they also shot at Pinewood Studios.
It's a global movie.
It really is. And, for me, it's the magic of movies. Because, listen, they went Iceland, the Dolomites, and the way you put this all together, seamless in this movie. I never, it was great. It was very seamless. I never felt that I left this location where they filmed this, and I thought that was, I thought it was great. Yeah. I thought it really was. And the cinematography, too. We have to talk a little bit about that because, again, they captured, this movie was so meant for that large IMAX XD type screen. They did a great job of putting me in there.
No offense to them, but when you're on a mountain like that, or out of all those locations, if you can't shoot this thing right, you suck at your job.
I don't disagree, but think about how hard it would be.
I get that.
To do that and to make it look good. I mean, the gentleman who
but it's one of those things like
Totino.
You as a cinematographer, if you are worth anything, you have a responsibility to shoot that way.
No, I agree, but when you have to match up that to scenes of the Dolomites, right? Which there could be color variations that are off. There could be, and then you got to go and film in a studio, and you have to match everything up, make it look as real as possible. That to me is the challenge. But you're right. If you're on location, you have your map as to how the rest of wherever else you're going to film, how you're going to make it look. And I think he did a fantastic job there. The action scenes actually were truly breathtaking and very suspenseful to me. Yeah. So
I thought the most dangerous part of this entire movie was when they reached the top. I was like, okay, where's the wind? Because all of a sudden, you're 2 feet away from the damn edge. Some wind picks you up it could be 50 miles an hour. You're coming down.
Oh yeah. Well, and as we saw that happen, and yeah, there were no railings, there were no guardrails up there. It was just touching the peak. I thought it was edited. Again, I felt the action was edited and put together. Like when the action was happening, that storm was coming through. Again, when you factor in sound mix, editing, cinematography. I mean, this is a guy, Mike Audsley, who he worked on Harry Potter, 12 Monkeys, Interview with a Vampire. He's been around for a while. And I just thought in this movie, that is when things, that's when we got into the shit. And I really felt like the pacing was on point. There wasn't a lot of shaky cam.
I'm glad for that, because you could have easily saw that go that route of okay, we're just going to do handhelds because it's simple.
Yep.
They had the camera stationary or move in the right way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, those are the scenes too where I really felt again where this movie worked. When they were doing the sound mixing, they used Dolby Atmos, and the director was saying how much he the technology that they have. They actually got sounds from Everest, the ice cracking and whatever. So again, I felt that he did make Everest and the conditions a character because they were so unpredictable, and the sound, I was looking around me, and it was amazing. Those parts I can't, those are great, breathtaking. So props to the people who actually went up there to make this movie. You have to give them credit, whether I loved it, disliked it, or what. These people, that was an arduous shoot, to say the least. They could have done this all in green screening. I mean, think about it, right? They could have done this in a sound stage. They could have filmed it in the Santa Monica Mountains or Big Bear for all. We may not have known the difference, but to shoot up there was pretty gutsy, especially to take expensive cameras, to go up there and do. So I think they did.
Man, it's not fun to film up there. You got to helicopter a lot of this crap in, and even. You know what would have been interesting? They didn't utilize this, and you know how the NFL has the sliding camera?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They didn't utilize
that.
that.
Was actually born of the XFL, and the NFL just stole that. The camera on the wire. That goes
The camera on the
zip,
wire was invented for mountain documentaries.
Was it really?
And the NFL, every football place stole that.
They all right. Point
Yeah,
taken.
I mean that was literally how they made it.
Yeah.
You know, that was for that
that would make
purpose. It was like,
sense.
oh, that's interesting. Let's utilize that for football.
And they didn't really utilize that here.
No, I mean part of it is you gotta have the way it works. You either really got to build poles, which and good luck to that,
Right.
or you got to find like the right trees to be able to do it, and you got to have like a clearing to. So there's, I mean, it's technically really involved,
Right.
and so I can imagine when they're like, we're okay on that.
And then, like, do you also credit? You have to credit the second unit director, for Kent Harvey, for directing a lot of these action scenes. And apparently, he's worked with Warren Miller before, so he knows his way around a good ski avalanche shot. And he felt that shooting some action sequences and stunt works. It was big, but he really wanted to stay away from using a lot of computer-generated graphics, which, whatever may have been used, I couldn't discern from it being computer-generated. So, kudos to them. And like I said, I just think kudos for them to matching it up because I couldn't tell a soundongstage from where they were.
I mean, the nice part is, because I think we've talked about this on other anatomies, but it's one thing. Visual effects are going to get better and better,
right?
But for the most part, you're still going to be able to tell if it was visual effect or not,
right?
But if you can make it, there's now a trend to just do it real,
right?
Because years from now, if it's real, no one's going to question it,
right? It's
and
true.
And it'll hold up much better than any visual effect.
Absolutely. That too is another one of the scenes in this movie.
Yeah, because they just couldn't get it up.
Yeah, they couldn't. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it when he's like, "Okay, we're gonna basically fall."
Yeah, we're gonna fall.
And then when we eventually hit the air that we need to hit,
yeah,
we'll figure something out.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great scene. And I do want to say, like, where there were characters where I weren't touched, by their passing. I will say again, and I think it's Jason Clarke's performance, but he was the character that we were following through for the most part. And I guess I always was holding out a little bit of hope, because again, I didn't fully read who lived and who died on this, and his character, there seemed to be like, we're sending somebody up, and but you knew when he said that final goodbye that was, even that character knew that it was.
That was tough because
goodbye.
It felt like you've seen Atonement, yeah?
Atonement?
Yeah, the movie.
No. Sorry.
All right. Well, this doesn't spoil anything, but so if you haven't either, it's okay. But there's a line towards the end of the movie that says, but what sense of hope does a reader derive from an ending like that? And that's what this kind of felt like. Yes, it's true of what happened, but it's just one of those unfortunate things. Like, you wish in some sort of way Rob died, and maybe again because now you're making a movie that you would have had Rob live. I don't know, and obviously then you would have so many people, I'm sure, how you insensitive bastards. He died.
You would have had to have changed the names of people. You would have had to have made it truly a fictitious disaster movie.
Yeah, but that was again, given what was actually true. That's the tough part because, up until that point, regardless of whether or not you know the truth, you're still fighting for him.
Yeah,
and you want him to be, because you're like, but that's Rob.
Yeah,
he can do anything.
Yeah,
and he couldn't.
And this, and that's the other thing I had to remind myself, and I also sort of reminded my friend who said, "Well, why couldn't Sam Worthington just go up and rescue him?" I'm like going, this isn't a Sylvester Stallone action picture. Like, this happened. Like, they weren't embellishing who died. This is pretty much how they died. Like, so, you couldn't have Sam Worthington be the hero, sort of the action hero, and scale the mountain and, death-defying odds and saving everybody or saving Rob, because that just didn't happen. You would have had to have made a fictitious movie called Everest and not have them related to these characters in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So, but to your point, that's the other thing too. We are, he was a good guy, and in caring, and you hope that the good guy is going to make it through. He's going to make it through that action movie. But it felt like an action movie at times, but ultimately.
But what do you get at? Let me ask you this. I'm not saying this in a negative way by any means. And if the answer is that it's a cautionary tale and that this is a piece of history, then okay, then perhaps that's the answer. But what is the message ultimately if, the one person, you can follow any one of these characters, but I would say Rob is definitely a main character, if not the main character.
Absolutely.
And he dies.
Yeah.
What are you left with? What's the moral? What's the message? What's the takeaway?
Don't do it. Don't do it. Like that character even said, like, don't do it. Like, I got, again, I walked out of that movie theater and said, that's just, no. I was happy to be in the comfort of that movie theater and watching that,
Did you feel
watching
cold?
the movie.
Did
You know
you
what?
put on a
I
blanket?
did. With all that wind and this, like it, I'm telling you, I'm so happy that this new immersive experience for movie going is around. Like I can't wait to see The Walk. And I'm afraid of heights. Widths a little bit more so. That's a Stephen Wright joke, but I can't wait to see The Martian. We've talked a lot about different XD movies, this past year. I love this immersive experience. This is, as a kid, I loved going to 70 millimeter. See a movie like, I couldn't see this movie in any other format. And
You don't want to watch it on your iPhone?
Yeah. I'll watch it on my iPhone as I'm on the bus and have everybody else yelling around me. No. I mean, this needs to be. I mean, it really, truly, like you did feel like when the ice cracked or there was an avalanche or somebody got hit in the chest full on with like a big snowball. Like you felt that oomph, and that's like a great way. I mean, it's a great way to see a movie. It was just like, again, that part was breathtaking. Even the ladder scene. The ladder scene was amazing as well. I mean, I'm not there, but you were on the edge of your seat, and I'm assuming you saw it 3D and.
I didn't see it 3D.
No, you didn't see it in 3D.
I just saw it regular.
Yeah,
but it was good.
I mean, it's just it was beautiful, and I'm trying to think, maybe it was just in IMAX and not 3D, and I think it was just in whatever without 3D. But man, again, the cinematography, the way they shot things, I felt lightheaded.
Yeah, I mean those ladders. Those ladders did not look safe.
No, nothing looks safe. I mean,
I
again,
thought
I
those
came
Home
walking
Depot
away.
metal ladders tied together with rope.
Yeah, if I have $65,000, it's a down payment for a house. It's not. I'm not climbing Everest. I'll climb the hills. And I'll climb the hill in Beacon Hill when I go home for Christmas.
Do you think? Let me ask do you think it needed more of a social message in the sense of, in that vein of, we as a society have become so bored. Because it's one of those, you can't really escape conflict, right? If your basic needs such as food, water, shelter are provided for you on a daily basis,
sure.
Yes, there's still parts of the world that struggle for those every day, and that's still tragic. But then, you have the flip side of it. America's tragedy is that we're trying to we're bored every damn day, so we've now turned to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as
Sure.
points of filling our time. And now this is the other extreme of it. It's like, okay, well, I have nothing better to do with my time. Let me just do something so extreme.
Well, Everest has been there, like, I mean, forever. Like it's that age-old joke, like, why do you want to climb Everest? It's not a joke. It was an actual quote. Well, because it's there. And, you've known of Everest, but to your point, flying in winged suits, I don't need to do. Bungee jumping off of train trusses and stuff, or cliff diving, or cliff bungee jumping, or bungee jumping out of a helicopter. No, I don't need to do. I don't need that excitement in my life. I've had, call me boring. That's fine. I'll drive on the 405. That's as exciting as life can get for me, and I can get pretty agitated and excited. Just talk to some of the passengers who've been in my car with LA drivers. That's about as exciting as I want to get. I'll play video games.
How much would you pay for that?
I seem to pay a little bit more and more with a little part of my life gets taken away every day. I'm in that traffic and dealing with those bobos on the road. But no, I just walked out of there and going, nope. $65,000, I would do something. I would use it for something else.
I guess that's a good place to end. We'll round it up with closing thoughts.
How about you, though? I mean, how about you?
I'd do something crazy.
Would you do,
you know what? I've done crazy things in my life. And you know what? It's... You never know your limit until you're fully pushed to it. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, part of it is there's an overthinking process.
Right.
Throughout all, we overthink too many things, and there's something, like I said, I mentioned it somewhere towards the middle, but especially on a mountain, there's just a simplicity.
Right.
But
can't you just drive to the Grand Canyon and see that beautiful simplicity? And not have to do you need to scale it? Do you need to prove something to yourself?
Sometimes
those
you might.
people, yeah, I understand that. I don't want to take away from those people that do it. It's just not,
I guess that's why we're sitting on opposite ends today.
I
just think, would I do Everest? Probably not. I don't necessarily need to do Everest. I don't need to do some major... Part of what I like... I don't know. This is now getting a little bit more personal, and perhaps you don't care, and so feel free to shut this damn thing off.
Because I asked. I'm curious. You asked that question of me.
I think for me, I like discovering my own things.
Sure.
I don't want to go where everyone else has gone and kind of says there might be a location that is absolutely fantastic and many people go, but for me, if I discover now. No, everything's been discovered, right? And go read Susan Sontag if you want on all this crap. But the point is, so you're never going to really have a true full of your own experience. So that's why for me, sometimes it's great just go somewhere without a map. I used to love biking anywhere and doing that. So sometimes there's things that you should do just to make yourself feel alive. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be Everest,
right? But
something that's different from your daily routine.
Yeah.
Where you discover a beauty, and hopefully it's a natural beauty, not the Game Boy that you're playing.
No, you know what? In Boston, you said bike without a map. I used to ride my bike a ton, around the North Shore, and you're right. I get. That's something that I can do. Pretty much. That's something that I can do with some relative safety around me. Outside of that, crazy, I pour milk in my cereal that's beyond the expiration date, maybe. But it's I do bike, things like that. I explore with music. I love listening to all different facets of music. It's just when it comes to climbing, when they say death could be involved or your body is physically dying with every step that you take, that I don't need. That's not the excitement I'm looking for.
That's the irony. That's when you feel. I'm not saying that's because of the way life is structured. There's just so much noise that in order to reach a certain serenity, that's what sometimes. That's the irony.
I know. I've been through enough excitement this past year.
That's enough philosophy class.
No, but that's the philosophy of why a lot of these climbers would do that. I just don't need to be flying in a winged suit or things like that. Like I said, I was very happy to be in the comfort of a theater watching this play out, and I felt a part of it that way, and how it drew me in due to cinematography, direction, editing, and sound, and that to me was amazing. So, I found that the movie was good. I just felt it had some narrative missteps that could have punched it up a little bit better, made some motivations more clearer, and maybe I could have become more attached to a few other characters that all in all, some of these people died and I didn't know who they were. And those are what I think about Everest.
Well, let's talk about numbers, not from a body count perspective.
Well,
International.
Well, we're going to talk about, we'll talk about numbers. Let's start off, this movie opened, as I said on the top of the show, it had one of those large screen format movies that I believe started with Mission Impossible 4. The one that Brad Bird directed, where it opened up only in like IMAX type theaters first, and then a couple of days later it would open up wide. This is happening again, and Everest was one of those movies. As I said, it opened up limited on September 18th. And it was on 545 theaters when it opened. It came in at number 5. And had a 13,000 plus screen average. Not too shabby. I think they might have wanted a little bit more because you are talking an upcharge for when you see it in this type of a thing. So then it opened wide on September 25th. So to give you an idea as to what wide means, it went from 545 theaters a week before to 3,006 theaters. So, and it only went up a notch. It went from 5 to 4, which is, I think they may have wanted more, but it was a competitive weekend this past weekend. We had a Hotel Transylvania, a very popular animated movie that came out. So domestically thus far, it has done $27.6 million. That's in the U.S. And we are talking about a movie that had its production budget of $55 million, which production budgets, that seems low. Am I wrong?
Movie,
right?
Yeah.
So
the amount of actors involved, the amount of
locations, getting up to equipment handling, like 55 seems low. So if that indeed is a true number, I have no reason at this point to disbelieve it. Then that director really knows how to bring things in on time and at a good budget. But it's including P&A now, or hard drives and advertising, $95 million. So that's all in. So they spent about a good $40 million to advertise this movie. And like I said, thus far, $27.6 million. Now, what I find interesting is the overseas number, the international number on this movie thus far. I was going to tell you to guess, but I told you before we started.
You did tell me.
$101 million overseas. So internationally, this movie's a hit. And when you factor in the domestic gross, they're going to make money off of this movie. I just find that it's just so fascinating to me that worldwide, $101 million. That to me is that's a so we got 26 million, 74 million foreign, so worldwide 100 million. I can't believe that foreign has eclipsed so much, $74 million. That's and we here in the States. So like I'm wondering why. What was different? What was the experience for overseas for this movie? That made it different than like why people may not have been clamoring in the States to go see this movie. I mean, because certainly the reviews weren't horrible. 72% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's still in fresh. So it wasn't like I got bad word of mouth over here. It's just that is it didn't seem as if this movie was made to be a foreign film, but yet
this movie seems a little bit of an older crowd movie. I don't know.
It absolutely. I don't disagree with that. I think it was it wasn't marketed for teenagers. This isn't a young adult novel. Yeah. But at the same sense, I mean,
Jennifer Lawrence, and we got a movie.
Absolutely. It just that is a despairing number, and I'd just be very curious to know like why the experience overseas like where they really went to go see this. I mean, maybe because it took place, like, you know, Nepal. Like I don't know. They had a different experience over there than we did over here. That's for sure. And now we're coming up to competition. You know, we've had other adult movies. Black Mass was out, so that digs in a little. You know, now we're going to the Walk comes out this week. The Martian comes out this week. Both of those are being touted as being, you have to see it on the large screen. So that's going to chip away. So, you know, the ultimate domestic gross for this movie could be 40, 50 plus, you know, but either way, when you're 100 globally and you're 95, they're going to do okay, but it's going to come from the foreign dollars on this one, which is just interesting to me. So,
Jason Clarke is an Aussie, right? He's an Aussie?
I believe so, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Support your actors.
Maybe.
I don't know.
It's just,
I
I just found that a very interesting statistic as to, you know, because this didn't seem like a foreign movie to me.
No.
You know, maybe the director has clout overseas. I don't know.
If
anybody has an answer.
People.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
The movie they go see a year.
Yeah, and they just rushed to Everest. So if anybody has any insight on that, please share, because I'm very curious. It's rare that it's so despairingly off, like different. It's usually the other way around. Sometimes those numbers, they need to catch up to us a bit, and it's a combination. But you know, so there you go. There you have it.
Thank you for joining us on another Anatomy of a Movie. There's a lot to discuss, as always, and we don't always get to it all, but that's what the comments section's for. So if there's any particular scene that you guys want to discuss more in depth, whether from a production standpoint, from a story standpoint, by all means. So much to go into it.
I want from a narrative standpoint too. I mean, because maybe I'm just talking like I want to know that the people who are listening to us and watching us, from a narrative standpoint, what did you think of Everest? Did the action eclipse the narrative for you? Were you bored at all, or were you excited? Like, did it grab you from the beginning? Did you get involved in the story, or did you feel like my friend who was like, yeah, no, I couldn't figure out why Sam Worthington just couldn't go up there and help them out. I just couldn't figure that out. I'm very curious about this movie because people are going and they're sort of enjoying it.
But for very different reasons.
Yeah, and that's what I want. Are you a climber? Did this capture that climbing feel for you? I obviously have no experience in that, but did it capture it?
You didn't climb a bunk
well?
bed when you were a kid?
I did climb a bunk bed when I was a kid, as a matter of fact.
There you go.
There you go. So
6 feet off the ground.
Yeah. So I'm just curious as to what other people thought about the narrative of this movie and the performances. Did you feel the same way? Did you feel different? Were you more attached to different characters? You can keep the music on. It's nice. It's a nice bed. It's a nice bed to.
I wanted. I wish we could have invested in some more people, but that's all right. Yeah, there was a lot of characters. Anyway, so there you have it. Definitely talk with us. And by the way, support us. You can follow us at Movie Anatomy. That's the show's Twitter, but also the Popcorn Talk for the Popcorn Talk Network. We've got a lot of great shows here on Anatomy of Movie coming up. As Demetri mentioned, Martian.
The Walk.
We'll be talking about that most likely next week. We're going to go back to 2 a week. We've been kind of... for those of you who don't know and don't quite follow the full behind the scenes, we've transitioned into a new facility, more studios, better equipment, and things of that nature. So we're still getting acclimated, and that's what's taking up most of our time. So we kind of lessened the schedule a little bit, partly because of the movies too.
Yeah.
But now we're coming into the swing of things. Some people aren't as excited for Pan. I actually am excited for Pan.
I am. I'm excited for Pan too. I think it looks. And I hope it's good.
And we've destroyed poor Marissa Serafini's heart by not doing Hotel Transylvania 2 today, but we will try to fit it in somewhere It's not always easy. And you know what? There's 800 movies. We get suggestions from you guys all the time. Some are old, some are new that we don't... You know what? Every week there's at least 2 movies that come out, and that's just a major release.
Yeah.
So many more on like limited, and we would love to do them all.
Absolutely.
And you know what? With your support...
We have only so many eyes.
Well, with your support, you know, if you guys keep telling a friend, keep watching, let's continue the viewership. Let's get a couple new people. We'll try to get a couple new people for the panel as we've been bringing in. And you know what? In time, yeah, it could be feasible. I'm not saying within the next 2 months, 3 months, maybe not within a year, but you know what? Maybe the goal will be to cover every single one of these movies.
We'll do our best.
You know, no promises, but we will try. And you try, you know.
And we're always gonna, you know, I will credit us for running the gambit, because we can talk about an Everest, we can talk about a Mockingjay, but yet then we'll do like Under the Skin, you know, which was one of the highest watched movies that we had. Where only 5 people saw it, I thought, but you know, the actual movie. Yeah, the actual movie. We you know, we do try to do the big and the small, and that's what I think is fantastic. We don't shy away from kids movies at all, or family film, and so you know, tell us what you think. And chime in, and so you can support me on Twitter. Cortez last week, we did Black Mask, and he says, I like to have people support me on Twitter as opposed to following me on Twitter. So you can support me on Twitter, please, at dmovies1701.
There you go. And thank you guys for joining us yet again. It's always really, really a pleasure. We do. From the bottom of our heart, thank you. And check out the other great Popcorn Talk shows. We've got so many of them. You know what? There's a great special treat coming up on Profiles with Malone and Mance. I believe 3 people should be guesting. If I'm not mistaken, James Cameron, Ivan Reitman, and Sigourney Weaver.
Shut up.
So, hey, you know what? I know I just dropped a lot of names. You might want to get a broom to pick all those
bomb
names.
on me. Oh my God, that's amazing.
So, anyway, and that's just one show. That's just one episode.
I mean, how often do I reference Cameron?
We'll see you next time. Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.